Good afternoon, happy October. I get a lot of questions regarding how I create my jewelry pieces, such as this one. And today I thought I would dedicate an entire video showing you my process, start to finish, and the tools that you'll need to create them for yourself. Starting with probably the most important necessity, air dry clay. The second thing you're going to need is molding tools. First and probably most importantly is a small X-Acto knife. I didn't obtain this until a little later and my life has been so much better for it. And then I have this little assortment of metal tools. These are pretty good. And these are also a necessity. These are like these silicone brushes. These are phenomenal. I love these so much. You will probably also want a rolling pin. Some of these screw-in hardware pieces. And then there's kind of a variety of different hardware pieces you're going to need. The most important ones being jump rings, and then I think these are called head pins. And these I use for attaching beads to adorn the charms. I use chain as well, just like this kind of ribbon roll of stainless steel chain, because I personally like to create necklaces. Depending on what kinds of jewelry you're going to create, maybe you'll want like earring fish hooks. It really is dependent on what you want to create. I would also highly recommend getting yourself some lobster clasps. Your pliers, you absolutely must have pliers. I have two sets of pliers, and one thing I really like about this orange pair here is that there is a small ridge in the nozzle, I guess. I don't know what that would be called. There is a small ridge towards the end there, and that really helps clasp down jump rings and close them together without hurting your fingers. And then there's the fun part, which is whatever you personally want to adorn your jewelry with, like your separate beads and charms that you can add on to your air dry clay charms, like for example, leaves. I'm going to be using these in today's project. The last optional material that I personally like to have is a little trinket dish. The reason I like these little dishes is because you don't have to have all of your tools and supplies readily available. You can just grab a handful of what you know you'll need and keep it in this little dish. That definitely saves you some working space. But that's enough yapping out of me. Now that you know what you need to get started, we're going to actually get started. I would also recommend, when you are in the molding stage of the process, one big tip I have is to try and keep everything inside an airtight container for as long as possible. If you have working pieces, try and keep them in an airtight container. And your best friend when you are molding will be a spray bottle with water. I used to keep a water trinket dish, but the spray bottle is just so superior for so many reasons. In celebration of October, I will be making a small pumpkin. So I don't need very much. Now I need round little balls for my pumpkins. Going into my molding box here, I'm selecting two tools to help me make these pumpkins. They're a pretty simple design. Actually, make that 3. So my pumpkins are going to be split up into like 8 ridges. So I'm making just kind of this little cross section here. Right now it kind of looks like a tomato, but I'm gonna go around the circumference of each of these markings. It's pretty good. We don't want it to look too harsh. So I'm just gonna kind of smooth these out a bit. This is where this small itty bitty little ballpoint metal piece is gonna come in handy. Enhancing these lines a little bit. And then this larger ballpoint comes in handy. I'm just gonna push in the ends a little bit. So now that I'm quite happy with this little pumpkin shape, I can grab one of these little screw rounds, I don't know, screw loops, whatever. And stick them right in the center. Very careful. And then we're just gonna screw. Applying a little bit of pressure, but not too much. Okay, I've made a mistake here. I meant to do a 6-way cross section, but I'm starting on 4, which is wrong. So all I gotta do is give it a little spritz. And then wash that away. Probably gonna do a quick little roll again. And now that's pretty easy to just pretend that didn't even happen. There we go. All right, all done with my pumpkins. Okay, so now, fortunately for you all, I have a small pumpkin patch prepared. You know, I now realize I did not mention anything about needing paint in my intro. However, you definitely will be needing paint if you want to color your charms. I am using acrylic. It is functional, it dries fast, it's cheap, it's great. To mix up a base pumpkin color, I'm just mixing up a bit of a yellow tinted orange. I have 2 sizes, neither are very big, but one is a fine detail brush. I'm going to desaturate this pumpkin color a little bit because I want it to be a little more moody and a little less like bright neon Halloween. So just a teensy bit of white and a smidge of black. Okay, that's like perfect to me. So I'm gonna start applying just the base color. Okay, I got a little crazy, started painting a good amount of pumpkins. Quick tip, when you are painting, I don't know why I didn't do this to begin with, but I find it very helpful to paint the bottom first, get the top finished, and then by the time your top is finished, the bottom has dried. So now you can rest it down easily without any problems, and you can finish the center. So they kind of look like ice cream sandwiches before they are done. Anyways, I'm going to pick 2 of these pumpkins and shade them with my shading color. I'm just giving them little dabs across the top because I think that looks cute. So we're going to take our painting and molding materials away, and we're gonna move into the resin finish part of the video. I put that in quotations because I'm just going to demonstrate my resin process using clear nail polish. The only reason I'm not showing you my real resin process is because I'm not going to use it indoors. I only use it outside, and I don't want to bring my camera outside. Now, if you want to finish your projects, I started off, and I recommend this for anyone who's not sure if they're going to keep up with the hobby, I would recommend getting clear nail polish. And if you decide that you really like making jewelry, I really recommend coating with resin because it just increases the longevity and quality of your work tenfold. Okay, so once again, assuming that you're using real resin for this process, This is my respirator mask, very affordable, only $16 on Amazon. These cartridges are safe, and this is the brand of epoxy resin that I use. So I'm going to kind of simulate the resin experience as best I can without actually using resin indoors. But you do want a silicone mat to be laid down. So you have your silicone mat. Ideally, you'll be wearing gloves and using practically any tool that you don't mind getting probably destroyed by resin. Your silicone mat should not have holes in it, by the way. Once again, I use resin outdoors, so if anything drips through the holes, it only ends up getting on like my little wood bench, so it's not a big deal. But if you're doing this on furniture that you don't want to destroy, please don't use an old bath mat like I did. My process is actually pretty apartment friendly. So what I do is I go outside, I have my respirator mask on. There are lots of videos on how to use resin, whether it's epoxy or UV. The key difference between epoxy resin and UV resin is that epoxy resin comes in 2 different containers and you mix them with a 1-to-1 ratio, and then it begins curing immediately as soon as it's mixed. Whereas with UV resin, you apply it and then it rapidly cures when you put it under a UV light, but it will not start curing on its own. Generally, UV resin is a little bit easier to work with, but I like my process with epoxy, so I'm kind of just sticking with it. So we're just going to coat the top first. We're not going to touch the bottom. And then when that's coated, I have my little container, and we're going to put the charm carefully inside one of the compartments. And as long as you didn't put too much resin on the top, it will not drip to the bottom. It'll stay on the top. And then basically you tuck them in for bed. So I close it. I carefully, without shaking around the charms, I bring this inside my apartment. I let it sit and I don't touch it for like a day, maybe a day and a half. And then I go back outside with my respirator on. I open up the container. I grab back out the little charms. And then you can work on coating the other half, the half that you did not touch. And the top half should be dry, so you can kind of finesse them back in a little bit. And then do the same for this other charm. Having pliers also might be helpful for this step if you so choose, or wire. Now, since I am not actually using resin, this is just a demonstration, and I'm really using a transparent top coat nail polish, I am going to let this dry by kind of hooking it onto this pair of pliers. I'll set this up on a surface and I'll actually put the other little pumpkin on the other. So we will clear all these out of the way and then I'll show you how to do a very simple earring style. For this project, we're going to keep it very simple. We just need 2 of these fish hooks, 2 leaves, and 2 jump rings. That is it. If you were to use these eye pins, the thing that you would use them for, hypothetically, would be sticking them through a bead, looping the other end, and then you could use it in your metal jewelry. But we're not going to do that today, keeping it real simple. So the rest of this can all go away. Oh wait, we gotta grab our pliers. Pliers. So we have our little charm, and all you need to do is open up your jump ring. So pry it open. And then you're going to loop the charm onto the jump ring. Also going to loop the leaf on there. And this is pretty tight. You probably need a bigger jump ring for this, but I'm also going to squeeze my fish hook on here. Okay, I think I finally got it. Kind of took me forever. Oh. I like to kind of weasel in, grab that jump ring and squeeze it, clamp it down shut. Then there you go. That's a pumpkin. If you want to be extra, you can make a little card for it. This is actually going to be for my Halloween party. They will be party favors. Aren't those the cutest thing you've ever seen? Very, very cute. Now, before you simply click off the video because I've shown you everything you need to do, I do want to give you just a few tips, and these are really going to elevate your project. My first big tip is to let your charms dry for a lot longer than you think they need to dry. This largely depends on the thickness of your project. The smaller charms, I always let them sit out for at least 2 days, ideally 3. The other thing I would recommend is keep in mind structural integrity is going to be largely dependent on how many individual pieces you are attaching to your charm. Like, for example, when I made my Miku charms, I understood that the pigtails were kind of detached from the head itself, and I didn't want those pigtails to fall off. So I actually inserted a small piece of wire into each of the pigtails. You could also put in like a toothpick. So maybe don't try and get too crazy with how expansive your charm gets. Try and keep it all in a relatively small shape. Or just really coat it well with resin, and then you can kind of get as crazy as you want because resin just makes the charm extremely durable and that thing is never going to break. Now I want to give you some advice on these screw heads. So a few things. I will demonstrate in real time. This necklace I did not want constantly flipping back and forth between the front and back. So that is why it has 2 screw heads. These 2 screw heads are purposefully located more on top of the charm to avoid it tipping over because there's too much weight on top. My other piece of advice that's very important is you can only screw these in once. If you mess up the first time, you can choose a new spot to screw in, but you cannot screw back into the spot because that part of the structure has already been loosened by the screw entering once. It's going to create a cavity and eventually it's going to pop out. So the TLDR is be very careful when you are inserting these. It will make your life much better. Thank you to the people that asked me about my process because that inspired me to make this video. I'm really grateful for all of you who watch my content, and if you do this, oh my gosh, please send me pictures. These ideas are obviously for everyone to use and enjoy. I think that's all I have for you today. If you have questions, let me know. I will answer them in either shorts or even a whole video if the question is expansive enough. That's really all I have for you today. Go make something, and yeah, bye. Oh yes, and happy October. I'm so excited for Halloween.